Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei had been born as a half-devil and got harem? Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. I'm home, Issei called out as he entered his mansion. He had just been to the Phoenix clan's mansion to talk business and also to discuss the terms of which Issei could fight Riser at the rating game. As he entered, he was greeted by Seraphal's familiar that was a hydra, though it took on a form of a human girl who had snake-like features. Seraphal's familiar just handed him an envelope that had the Gremory and Phoenix seal on it. He nodded in thanks to the familiar before the familiar teleported back to its master or the familiar forest. Issei looked at the letter that was inside the envelope. Dear heir of Valifer. Due to the results of the rating game held 2 days ago, you and your peerage members are hereby invited to add the engagement party between Riser Phoenix and Ria's Gremory. The party will begin at 6 p.m. tomorrow night Underworld time. Please show letter to the guards before entering. Sincerely, the Phoenix and Gremory clans, Issei read out loud before he placed the letter on the lounge room table and headed out the back to see Asia surrounded in a golden glow, gazing around at the garden with a bird perched on her outstretched finger. I'm impressed, Asia, it's only been a week at most and you've already mastered what I wanted you to, Issei called out to her, pride laced in his voice as he spoke. Thank you, Issei-san, Asia stated in surprise as she turned to face Issei with the bird still perched on her finger. Now we can move on to the next exercise. Now I would like you to try and move the aura around your hands. To do this, try and imagine the river around your body going towards a single point in your body like your hands, Issei informed her as he showed her his hands that were covered in a red and green magic glow, though she could faintly make out some dark blue and light blue colors in it as well. Oh okay, Issei-san, I'll try, Asia told him with a confident nod as she went about trying the task Issei set her. Issei smiled softly at her as he walked over to Brynhildr. Brynhildr stopped her shadow sparring as she saw Issei approach. Can I help you, Issei? Brynhildr asked him as he approached. I would like to see how much you've improved since we last fought, Brynhildr, Issei stated as he pulled a sword out seemingly out of nowhere. Now I want you to come at me like you'd want to kill me, don't hold back. Very well, Issei, Brynhildr stated before she disappeared in a burst of speed before she thrusted forward with her lance toward Issei's heart, though Issei sidestepped her attack, though Brynhildr didn't waste a second in spinning the lance around to slash Issei, who ducked under the blade and strike Brynhildr's gut, which caused her to go flying back. Brynhildr quickly recovered and charged towards Issei with killer intent slightly in the air around her. She led with a mixture of thrusts and slashes with her lance, which Issei dodged and blocked with his sword at the same speed. That's it, come at me like you want to kill me, Issei stated with a grin on his face. Being part dragon, he always enjoyed fighting strong people, and even though he couldn't go full power because he would decimate her in mere seconds, he was enjoying this fight nonetheless. After 10 minutes passed, Issei called a stop to the fight as he looked around at the nearby trees. He was sure he felt someone watching their fight, but the magic signature he sensed completely vanished in seconds of him noticing it. That was excellent, Brynhildr. Work on your strength and stamina and you will become even stronger. Issei told her as he smiled at her, causing the fallen Valkyrie to blush slightly, though she quickly tried to go back to her stoic expression. In an unknown location. I have returned, Master, a voice stated as a figure approached a throne with a lean, well-built man seated on it. And how is he doing? The well-built man on the throne asked a figure kneeling at the bottom of the throne. The figure gives the man a rundown on what he observed of Issei's abilities in the last couple of weeks, which caused the man to smile excitedly. Ah, wonderful, he has grown wonderful since I last saw him. Though he still has a way to go before he is ready to face me. Continue to keep an eye on him, the man stated to the figure who saluted before vanishing into the darkness around him. You better learn fast, Issei, because I'll only wait so long, the man stated with a wicked grin. Back at the Valifer mansion. Sona and her peerage were waiting out the front of the Valifer mansion for Issei and his peerage to come out. Sona had been invited to the engagement party as well, and her mother and father had requested that she turn up with Issei so they could announce the engagement of her and Issei to the high-class devils that would be attending the engagement party. Sorry to keep you waiting, a voice called out from the front door of the mansion. Sona and her peerage looked over to see Issei, Asia and Brynhildr all in formal wear. No need to apologize, we only just arrived, Issei, Sona stated to him. Once my other peerage member gets here we shall depart, Issei told them, which caused them all, including his peerage members, to look at him with raised eyebrows and confused looks. You have another peerage member? Sona asked what everyone else was wondering. Yeah, I only found her recently, and I ask you all not attack her when she appears, Issei answered Sona, who still had a confused look on her face. Why would they want to attack her when she arrived? So this is your peerage, Naya, a voice called out from a tree nearby. Sona and her peerage, along with Asia and Brynhildr, looked towards the source of the voice and saw a woman clad in a revealing black kimono with cat ears and 2 tails, laying along the branch seductively. Not quite, Kuroka. My peerage is the two girls behind me, while the others are my fiancé, and her peerage. Issei explained to her as Sona tensed up with the announcement of the woman's name. Kuroka, an SS-rated stray devil, who was said to have gone mad and killed her former master, was now laying in a tree not too far from her and her peerage, and she is also now part of Issei's peerage. Well, anyway, are we heading of Naya? Kuroka asked as she made her way over to Issei and stood by him. That we are, Issei stated as he used a teleport spell to teleport everyone nearby to the Phoenix mansion where the party would be held. As the teleport spell faded and their vision adjusted from the sudden change in environment, they saw the glorious Phoenix mansion. The mansion itself was huge, a testament to the power the Phoenix clan held and the money they bought in. As the guards laid eyes on them, they brought up their weapons. I ask you all to back away from that stray devil so we can exterminate her. One of the guards ordered them as they readied their magic. I can't comply with that order as she is a member of my peerage, and I won't let any harm come to her as she is now under my restriction. Issei informed them as he flared a little bit of magic, causing the guards to shake slightly in fear. Or would you defy an ultimate class devil? You may proceed, the guards stated as the rest of them lowered their weapons to let them pass. As they got to the entrance of the mansion, Issei turned around and offered his hand to Sona. Shall we enter, Miss Citri? Issei asked her formally, and Sona could only nod in reply as she placed her hand on his, and they entered hand in hand together with their respective peerages following them in. Issei Valifer and Sona Citri have arrived with their respective peerages, the announcer stated as the two entered the main ballroom, which caused most of the other devils in the room to turn and look at them. Though as soon as they saw Kuroka, their faces went to a mixture of fear, shock and anger. Soon yelling started as they called for her to be killed on the spot, though Issei raised his hand up to silence the high-class devils. As I informed the guards outside the mansion. Kuroka Taoju is now under my command, so unless you want to fight me, I suggest that you don't lay even a small finger on her. Issei stated to them all, which silenced most of them, though Riser appeared on the main stage that had been set up. So now you've resorted to criminals of the underworld. First it was a holy maiden, then the fallen Valkyrie, and now one of the most dangerous strays. You really must be desperate for members to beat me, Riser gloated as he made his way towards Issei. Don't worry, Riser, you'll see the true power of my peerage when we battle in a raiding game, Issei informed with a confident grin. Oh, we will see about that, Riser stated with a smirk as his peerage stood behind him. Issei and his peerage were teleported into an open field that was on the edge of a lush green forest, while Riser and his peerage were teleported to the other side of the forest. Okay, this location here is our base for this raiding game, though we won't be staying here for long. I need you two to ambush Riser's peerage members in the forest before they have a chance to get to our base while I move to fight Riser. Issei informed his peerage while pointing to Brynhildr and Kuroka respectively. What about me, Issei-san? Asia asked him as she wasn't sure what she should do. Stay with Kuroka, Asia, and see if you can learn anything from her to help you with your magic control. Issei told her as he turned to the forest and awaited the start of the raiding game. A few minutes later, a strict voice could be heard around the forest. I would like to hereby welcome every to the raiding game between Issei Valifer and Riser Phoenix. I, Grafia Lucifuge, will be the announcer for this raiding game. The rules are normal raiding game rules. If the king of either side is defeated, then the match is over. Now without further ado, let the raiding game begin, Grafia announced with a cheer from the spectators watching the game. Kuroka, Asia and Brynhildr, begin the ambush, Issei ordered as Brynhildr dashed into the forest with high speed, while Kuroka and Asia ran into a different section of the forest, while Issei remained where he was originally standing. He would wait until most of Riser peerage members were beaten before he moved towards where Riser was. With Brynhildr was dashing between trees as she tried to sense where the enemy were located. Before too long she sensed 4 figures approaching her. She quickly jumped up into a nearby tree as the power signatures got closer and closer to her. Before long 4 figures appeared in her line of sight. All 4 of these figures were female, though they were each dressed completely different to one another. Though 2 of the outfits looked kind of similar to one another. 2 of the figures were carrying weapons, with one carrying a sword and dagger, while the other was carrying what looks to be his Zweihander. We know you're around here, we can sense your energy signature, a girl whose outfit seemed to be of Chinese origin, called out as they looked around in an attempt to find Brynhildr. Brynhildr landed in the middle of the group of the 4 peerage members and entered a combat stance. The girl with his Zweihander charged in with an overhead slash, which Brynhildr dodged with a sidestep before bringing her lance around her body and sent the girl into a nearby tree before she rushed forward in a burst of speed towards another one of the girls who was wearing a dress that seemed to be of Chinese origin. The girl in question brought her hands up to block the attack, in which Brynhildr countered by kicking out the girl's legs before slamming her lance into the girl's gut, which caused the girl to gasp in pain as she made a small crater in the ground. Riser Peerage, 1 Rook, retire Grafey, a voice called out as the girl in question was teleported out of the arena. Brynhildr turned around to face the other 3 girls who were all seemingly entering an offensive stance as Brynhildr twirled her lance around, ready for what they would bring. But Kuroka and Asia. Brynhildr has already taken out someone, Asia stated softly as she and Kuroka watched as 8 girls with different attire walked around, trying to get out of the forest, though Kuroka had set up her territory and made it so they would be stuck in this enclosed area. Looks like I better step up my game, Kuroka said as she weaved seals in the air, which caused a mist to appear on the ground. What's is the mist, Kuroka? Asia asked with some fear as she saw the girls drop to their knees coughing. It's a senjutsu mist that is poison, though it won't kill them. As I lowered the poison levels, Kuroka explained to the girl who looked scared but also looked like she wanted to go heal the 8 girls, though she was trying to hold herself back. Riser's Peerage, 8 pawns, 1 rook and 2 knights, retire Grafey's voice announced. With Riser was in shock. His sister's strategy had failed and all of his peerage members had been taken out with the first 5 minutes of the raiding game. This is an outrage, Riser yelled out as his flaming wings sprouted out of his back as a magic circle appeared in front of him. The magic circle brought forth a massive beam of fire that engulfed the forest between the 2 bases. He smirked in triumph as he waited for Grafey to announce that he had won the raiding game, though it never came. He felt massive demonic energy that was mixed with dragon approach him from the forest, and to his surprise, Issei walked out seemingly unharmed by the flames around him. Let's see how much you can take, Riser, Issei stated as he flew up to the same level as Riser. Shouting atrocities in anger, Riser fired fireball after fireball towards Issei, who blocked them with his own fireballs, further angering Riser. Let's see how you handle this, you pathetic dragon. Riser shouted as he launched a massive fireball towards Issei, who raised his left hand to block it. As the fireball reached Issei's hand, it exploded, causing smoke to cover the place in the sky where Issei was hovering. As the smoke faded, it revealed Issei, whose left arm had some burn marks on it, though most of his left arm was covered in a red gauntlet. That actually did some damage, Riser. Color me impressed, Issei told him as the gauntlet on his left arm glowed brightly. But this ends now. Welsh Dragon Balance Breaker. Issei was covered in red armor that looked like some sort of dragon armor, with dragon wings and a tail coming out of the armor as well. Let's go, Riser, Issei stated as he launched forward at the speed of light and slammed his fist into Riser's gut and then flip over and slammed his armored leg into Riser's head, sending him down into the ground with a sonic boom. As Riser hit the ground, a sickening crack resonated through the arena, though all damage to Riser was seemingly repaired in a few seconds. Riser fired massive fireballs towards Issei, who shattered them with a wave of his hand. Issei landed on the ground behind Riser and tapped him in the shoulder. Riser, remember this, as I won't repeat myself again. I am the Alpha, the Omega, so if I hear that you've insulted my family, my peerage members or the Citri clan, I will kill you. Now kneel, Issei announced as he released all of his magic, making the ground around them shake and rocks to float in the air as Issei was surrounded in a red, green and blue colored magic. No, I am Riser Phoenix, the immortal Phoenix. I won't lower myself below you, Riser yelled in retaliation as he fired a fireball with all his remaining magic towards Issei, who just sighed and used his hand to block the fireball and send it into the sky. Very well, then I'll need to educate you some more, Issei stated as a red ball of energy formed in the front of his knuckle. The red ball of energy continued to grow until it was about the size of Issei's hand before Issei pulled his fist back. Dragon shot, Issei shouted as he punched the red ball of energy sending towards Riser, who could only stand there and watch, though, instead of it colliding with him, it flew past and exploded behind him. Understand, Riser, that no matter what you do, this raiding game is over, now forfeit or the next one will hit, Issei informed him, as Riser nodded. I forfeit, Riser announced as he and the remainder of his peerage were teleported out of the arena as Issei deactivated his balance breaker and let out a victorious roar that sent shivers down everyone's spine. Riser has forfeited the match, the victor is Issei Valifer, Grafey announced, which caused Serafol, Sona and his peerage to smile lightly as Issei and his peerage were teleported back to the party. The party continued for a fair amount of time till it neared the conclusion, with Issei having made talk with some of the other leaders of the remaining devil clans about different subjects. Now before everyone departs, I would like to announce something. Lord Citri informed the crowd of high-class devils that were at the party. I would like to announce that the heir to the Citri clan, Sona Citri, and the current head of the Valifer clan, Issei Valifer, are engaged. As Lord Citri finished his announce, the crowd clapped with some whispers escalating around the room, though none of them seemed concerning to Issei, who had a light smile on his face, while Sona was blushing up a storm next to Issei. The party soon ended and Issei and his peerage teleported back to his manor for some rest, not they needed it all that much. Issei slipped into some pajama pants and hopped into his bed and closed his eyes, though he felt later on 2 others climb into his bed and curl themselves around his arms. Once again Issei woke up with people in his bed, though this time he had two people instead of just one person. As he opened his eyes he took in his surroundings. He had a naked Kuroka on his left arm and had a naked Serafal on the right arm with both his arms sitting between their breasts. He tried to move himself out of both their grips, but he somehow couldn't move a single bit. He just sighed to himself as he relaxed into the mattress as he waited for them to wake up. I have a feeling there is going to be even more in my bed in the future, Issei thought to himself as he closed his eyes again. That's probably a very accurate statement, partner Drake agreed with him. He was about to drift off again when he heard the door open to his room. As he opened his eyes and looked towards the door, he saw Brynhildr staring at him with an impassive look, though he could faintly make out a small pink blush on her face. Looking to join, are we? Issei asked her with an impassive look. Brynhildr just looked at him and spoke up. Maybe. Breakfast is ready, she stated with a small hint of emotion in her voice before she left as she closed the door behind him. Issei activated his magic to enhance his body and sat himself up, which in turn caused Kuroka and Serafal, who had been attached to his arm, to wake up. Morning, Issei. Naya Kuroka greeted him as she sat up, her naked form reveled from under the rug. Morning, Kuroka. Issei greeted her as he stood up from the bed, but before he knew what had happened, arms wrapped themselves around his frame and slammed him back onto the bed with Kuroka straddling his body, her naked body in full view. How about we have some fun before breakfast, Naya Kuroka purred as she rubbed her naked frame on Issei's torso. Not a chance, Black Cat, a cold voice called out from nearby. Looking over, Issei saw Serafal with her magical aura slightly wrapped around her frame. What are you going to do about it, Miss Leviathan? I'm clearly in the better position, Kuroka argued as she grinded herself against Issei, who just remained still as he tried to resist the urge to bolt out of the room. Oh, I doubt that. I know how to exactly get what I want from him, after all we've done it before, Serafal stated with a smirk as she brought Issei's head onto her legs. Now girls, breakfast is ready, so I would like to get down there as fast as I can, Issei informed them as he looked up and saw them both glaring at each other with such an intensity that it looked like they were trying to kill each other with looks alone. Okay, Issei, they both stated as they proceed to get dressed and leave his room with not one glare between them, though as the door shut behind them, he felt both their magical signatures increase. Now to get dressed, Issei stated as he got on his normal casual wear for the day, though before he could open the door to head down for breakfast, he heard a knock on the window. He turned to face the window and saw a white dove sitting on ground near the window with an envelope in its mouth. Issei went over to the balcony door and opened it as the dove placed the envelope on the ground and flew off. I wonder what's in this envelope? Issei asked himself as he opened it quickly and pulled the letter out from it. Dear Issei. How you doing, man? It's been a long time since we last hung out and I kind of need your help with some problems involving a blonde. Can you meet me in 2 days' time in England, and don't worry about finding me, I'll be able to find you as your magic signature is easy to locate it when you're nearby. Sincerely, Achilles, Issei read out loud with a frown on his features. What has that boy done now? Issei thought out loud as he placed the letter into his pocket before he made his way down to the dining room for breakfast. As he entered, it seemed like everyone was happily eating the food that had been served, though he could feel some tension in the air between Kuroka and Serafal, though it seemed like he was the only one who had noticed it. He sat down at the head of the table as per usual and began to eat from the plate that had been served in front of him. Asia, you've improved on your cooking skills yet again, Issei stated with a small smile at the girl's progress after he had taught her how to cook. Thank you, Issei-san, I had Brynhildr help me as well each morning since she arrived, Asia told him with a smile. Then I should also thank Brynhildr as well. I appreciate the effort you two give in making breakfast, he told both girls as Asia blushed heavily at the praise, while Brynhildr only had a small blush on her face. Now girl, I have some business in England that I must attend to on my own. I would like you all to behave while I'm away, and you are all welcome to do what you wish around the mansion if it doesn't do any significant damage to the house or will have any backlash on the Valifer house. I don't know how long I'll be gone for, though I'm hoping it won't be for too long, Issei informed the girls, who all look sad to some degree with him having to leave for an unknown length of time. How can we contact you if something goes wrong? Kuroka asked him. I'll be available by magic communication if you need, he answered as he finished up his breakfast. Well, if that is all, I need to be heading off to see my fiancée and tell her about where I'm going. Everyone nodded and went their separate ways for the day. Kuroka and Brynhildr headed out to the training yard behind the house, while Serafal teleported assumingly to her office so she could go about her formal duties as the Leviathan. Asia joined up with Issei as he needed to head to Kuo Academy anyway, so he could teleport Asia with him. As he stood outside the Valifer mansion, he summoned a teleportation circle that would take them to the student council room so they wouldn't be seen just randomly appearing inside the school grounds. Okay, let's go, Asia, Issei stated as he stepped onto the magic circle with Asia following him. Once she was ready, he initiated the teleport to the school. With a flash of light, they were teleported into the student council chambers. Morning Sona and Peerage. Issei greeted them with a small smile as Asia bowed in greeting before heading off to meet her friends. Morning Issei, what brings you to my territory? Sona asked formally as she gestured for him to take a seat opposite to her with a small smile on her face. Tomorrow I'll be heading off to England on some business and I would like to propose that while I'm gone, you could handle my family affairs until I return from this trip. Issei proposed to her with a small smile on his face as he awaited her answer. I accept the offer as now that I am your fiancé I should get help your family prosper. Sona answered him with a small blush on her cheeks which went unnoticed to most except for Issei and Tsubaki, Sona's queen. Thanks a lot Sona, I appreciate the help Issei stated with a small smile as he stood up and went to leave so he could get ready too for tomorrow's trip, though he stopped when some thin arms wrapped themselves around his torso. Please stay safe, my sister would be devastated if you were to die when she had just found you again, Sona stated to him as she tightened her hold on him slightly, much to the shock of her peerage. Don't worry Sona, I'll be back. I've still got something to achieve before I kick the bucket. He stated to her as he smiled to himself. After she heard his words of reassurance she let him go so he could teleport home to get ready. As he teleported Sona brought her hand to her chest. Please come back. For me as well she thought to herself as he vanished. Once Issei was home he made his way to his room. As he paced the lounge room he saw Kuroka curled up on the couch much like a cat which made him smile. This place is slowly regaining a homely feel again he thought to himself as he made his way up a staircase to his room. Once he was in his room he grabbed one of his travel bags and proceeded to fill it with around a week's worth of clothes which he was pretty sure could last him until he could get home. He also made sure to grab his passport and all the other paperwork he would need to be able to board a flight to England. After he packed up everything he would need he made his way out onto the balcony of his room which gazed out over the training ground. As he walked to the end of the balcony he saw himself and his father training down on the area when he was younger. His mother would sit out on this balcony as she was too weak to move too much at one time. As the memories faded he saw Brynhilder's shadow sparring with her lance, though it seemed to have grown since he last saw it. After watching her shadow spar, he decided to head down and train with his family's magic as he hadn't used it much since the war ended. He made his way out to the training grounds he sat down on a patch of dirt he usually used for meditating. He placed his arms out to each side of his body and reached deep into his magic reserves to try and bring forth the magic he had locked away. He then brought it out to each of his hands as the ground around him shook and moved around him. He closed his eyes to improve his concentration and tried to bring a section of the earth up to the palms of his hands, though to his surprise the earth around him had barely moved upwards. Damn it, Issei thought as he tried again though, as with the last try the earth didn't move to how he willed it. He kept trying and trying throughout the day, but he had only managed to bring forth a small pillar from the earth. Issei laid down backward as he let out a frustrated sigh. While it had been a while since he had last used his magic, he didn't think it would have been this bad that he could even complete a simple exercise that he had done when he was 5 years old with his father. He looked about and saw that it was already dark outside and decided to head back inside to see about having a shower before dinner. He brought out his 12 wings, 6 of which were dragon-looking wings, and flew himself up to his room's balcony so he could avoid most of the household until dinner. He softly touched down on the balcony and made his way into his room. He entered the shower and turned the heat up as much as he could so that it burned his skin on contact. He enjoyed the warmth as being part dragon, thanks to the boosted gear he had a resistance to heat-related things. As the water ran over his body he felt his muscles relax which caused him to moan in comfort. I always liked your figure when wet a voice called out from the door. Issei turned his head towards the voice to see Seraphol standing at the door in her nightgown. Anything you need Seraphol? Issei asked her as he turned to face her. She had seen him plenty of times naked, so he wasn't all that embarrassed to have her gaze at him. Well, I wouldn't say I need what I want. Seraphol stated as she moved closer to him. Well, I had to disappoint, but I don't feel comfortable with the idea of that just yet, Issei informed her as he raised his hand to stop her advance. Oh well, how about when you get back? We go on a date? Seraphol asked Issei softly. She wanted to mend the gap that had formed, to reconnect with him and see the old Issei come back. Sure Seraphol, we can go on a date when I get back. Issei stated to her with a small grin which caused said girl to blush. Oh okay, it's a deal then, don't back out or I'll start calling you Wimpy Dragon again, Seraphol teased Issei with a smile. Issei just chuckled to himself after Seraphol had left the room. It seemed like his life was slowly heading back in the right direction, though something at the back of his mind told him he'd have to face more challenges before it was a reality. 2 days after he received the letter from Achilles, he walked out of the Heathrow airport in London with his duffel bag in his left hand. He pulled a piece of paper out of his jeans pocket and gazed over it. Hotel 41 Buckingham Palace Road, London. The note read in Issei's signature handwriting. He had booked this hotel the day he received the letter from Achilles, and luckily for him there were still rooms available for him to check into for a couple of days. If he needed to stay longer in the hotel he would book the room for longer, but at this current moment in time he had booked a room for 3 days. He looked around the front of the airport and tried to find a taxi to take him to the hotel. As it was the middle of the day here in London it was quite busy, with people coming and going to the airport. Soon he could find himself a taxi that was free and sat in the back of it. 61 Wilton Road please, Issei stated in fluent English. One of the perks of being a devil was the fact that you could interpret any language and able to learn that language quite fast. No problem sir, the taxi driver stated as he turned on the taxi and drove up towards the address Issei had given him. Issei took the time to admire the city around him as they slowly traveled through the busy streets of London. He had been here about 30 years ago, and this was where he had met Achilles after the hero faction tried to recruit him. Lest to say with both Issei and the full-blooded descendant of Achilles, the two they sent didn't even stand a small fraction of a chance against them. They quickly became friends, which was weird considered how their personalities don't usually mix all that well. With Achilles being a massive flirt with women and as he inherited the godly good looks from his ancestor, it could be said that they usually got into a lot of trouble with some women, or some men for that matter. Issei was brought out of his thoughts by the taxi driver who announced that they had arrived at the location. Issei paid the taxi driver before grabbing his gear and exiting the taxi onto the sidewalk. In front of him was a massive building that looked quite nice to the eyes. Issei made his way into the hotel and headed for the reception desk. "Do you have a reservation, sir?" One of the ladies at the reception desk asked him in a polite manner. "Yes, I do, the reservation is under the name Mr. Draco Red," Issei answered her with equal politeness. The receptionist quickly searched up the booking and checked the room number while Issei patiently waited. "Ah yes, here it is. Your room is on the 60th floor and is number 18. We hope you enjoy your stay here, Mr. Red," the receptionist told him after she handed him his room card. "Thank you," Issei stated before he made his way to elevator at the end of the lobby. He entered the elevator and clicked on the 60th floor. The elevator ride was quite quick and he soon entered his room. He gazed around the room and was impressed by the quality of the room for the price he had paid for it. He was quite fancy and in Issei's mind, well worth the money he spent on it. He went and placed his bags onto the massive king-sized bed before he made his way out onto the balcony that his room had. Even though it was still around early afternoon in London, the view was still quite nice to Issei's eyes. One of the things he missed from when he was traveling around the world was all the different beautiful views that he came across during different parts of the days. After an hour of just gazing out at the city of London, the phone in his room began to ring. He made his way over to the phone and picked it up. "Hello?" Issei stated as he answered the phone. "Sorry to disturb you, Mr. Red, but there is someone waiting for you down in the lobby," one of the receptionists told him through the phone. "Tell them I'll be right down," he told the receptionist slowly, who replied swiftly. "Very well, Mr. Red," she stated before she hung up the phone. Issei made his way back down to the lobby, and as the elevator doors opened to the lobby, he saw a blonde male who was dressed in smart casual wear, currently flirting with one of the receptionists at the reception desk. The receptionist was bright red with embarrassment, though to her luck once the man had caught sight of Issei out of the corner of his eye, he said farewell and made his way over to Issei. "Yo Issei, it's been a while," the man greeted as he held out his hand for a handshake. "It's only been 5 years since we last met, so not too long," Achilles Issei stated to him with a small smile. "To you it may not seem that long, but for me it has been a while," he retorted with a smile. "I suppose so, and would you stop flirting with every woman you come across? It has gotten us in more trouble than I care to remember," Issei stated to Achilles, who just smirked in response. "Can't help it, man, it's in my genes after all. Ladies just can't resist the descendant of the legendary Achilles," Achilles stated with pride. "Let's just head up to my room and talk business," Issei sighed as they made their way into the elevator. They shortly entered Issei's room and Achilles placed a folder down on the coffee table before he sat down on a lounge chair. "So, what did you do to a blonde?" Issei asked as he took a seat on the couch in front of the folder Achilles produced. "I haven't done anything to her and I doubt I would try. She's not what you call my type," Achilles stated, which earned him a slightly shocked expression from Issei before Issei composed himself. "Then what did you call me all the way to England for?" Issei asked him. Slight anger lingered in his voice as he spoke. "Look in the folder," Achilles stated simply as Issei opened the folder and read the first page. As he read through the first page of the file, his facial expression turned into shock. "Is this true?" Issei asked Achilles as he flicked through the other pages in the folder. "If you have seen her then you would believe me, and before you say it's impossible for her to have that weapon, I've seen its brilliance, and let's say it's the real fucking thing," Achilles stated to him with a serious expression which was quite rare. Before they had a chance to talk more, the phone in Issei's room rung. Issei went over to answer it carefully as he hadn't been expecting another call. "Hello?" Issei stated carefully into the phone as he answered it. "Sorry for the interruption, Mr. Red, but there is someone down at the front desk wishing to speak with you." The receptionist informed him softly, though Issei could hear some fear in her voice. Issei motioned for Achilles to follow him as they both made their way down to the lobby. The elevator door opened to the lobby and they saw a female with long blonde hair, dressed in what could be called a biker outfit. As they approached, the blonde female turned to face them, as her piercing red eyes seemingly judged them. Once she had seemingly gauged their abilities, she made her way over to Issei and stood in front of him. "You shall fight me, I want to test your worth," she stated simply as her eyes gazed into Issei's eyes with a serious look. "And if I refuse?" Issei asked her as he met her gaze with equal seriousness. "You wouldn't dare refuse me, mere mortal," she hissed at him as she stood taller than him. "Do I even get the choice to refuse?" Issei asked as he sighed to himself. "No, you don't. Now come along, mortal, let's see if you can entertain me," the blonde woman stated as she basically dragged Issei out with Achilles quietly following behind him. They made their way into an alleyway before the blonde woman used her magic to teleport them outside of the London where there was seemingly no buildings or people around. "Before we fight, I'd just like to ask a question," Issei informed the blonde woman, who shook her head. "Prove to me you are worthy and then you can ask questions," she told him as a sword flew past Issei, leaving a cut on his cheek. "Fine, then you asked for it," Issei stated as the boosted gear activated. "Welsh Dragon Balance Breaker. Play stronger by Empathic." Issei moved forward with a burst of speed towards the blonde woman and aimed a punch at her gut. The blonde woman dodged to the side as more swords came flying forth towards Issei, who blocked them with his arms before jumping backwards as his boosted gear glowed. Boost. Issei felt his overall power double as he charged his magical energy into the front of his right fist. The red energy began to appear in the shape of a ball, but the blonde woman fired a sword to collide with it, which caused the ball of magical energy to explode prematurely in Issei's face, sending him flying back. "So, I can't use Dragon Shot," Issei thought to himself as he stood up. "Come on. I heard that the Red Dragon Emperor was supposed to be strong enough to be compared to the current Lucifer, but it seems the info was wrong and I won't be getting the fight I deserve." The blonde woman taunted as yawned with boredom. Issei remained standing as he shook with anger. Being a part dragon, he could stand being called weak, as it was a known fact that dragons were one of the strongest beings in existence. Boost. 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 The boosted gear responded in kind as his power increased to a massive level, as his body was covered in a red aura, with red sparks flying off his body. The ground around Issei started to crack and he took steps towards the blonde woman. In a sudden burst of speed, he disappeared from his position before he appeared behind the blonde woman and slammed his armored leg into her side, which sent her flying to the side. "That's it, show me that strength of domination," the blonde woman cried out in joy as she dodged and blocked some of Issei's blows. Issei was able to kick her legs out from under her and then axe kick her into the ground, which formed a crater underneath her. He went to kick her again, but he found his body suddenly constricted by chains. "What the?" Issei called out in distress before swords pierced through his armor into his back, which caused him to cough up a large amount of blood. The blonde woman stood up as golden armor appeared on her body, giving her a godly appearance and making her glow golden in the afternoon light. "You put up a good fight for 10 minutes it lasted, so you've earned to know my name. I am Gilgamesh, the reincarnation of the original king of Uruk," Gilgamesh stated as she raised her hands out to the side to further enhance her beauty. "Who said I'm done?" Issei stated as he dropped to one knee. "I'm nowhere near done. You can't even stand, and with my chains there is no way you could win," Gilgamesh informed Issei, who slowly stood up despite the chains holding him in place. "I who shall awaken." Issei began to chant as red orbs came forth from his body and his power spiked to new height. "I'm the heavenly dragon who has stolen the principles of domination from God. I laugh at the infinite. And I grieve at the dream. So, you were still holding back on me, show me your full strength now, Red Dragon Emperor." Gilgamesh moaned as she witnessed this power. "I shall become the red dragon of domination and I shall sink you into the depths of crimson purgatory." Juggernaut Drive, Issei showed as a flash of red light consumed the area. When the light faded, Gilgamesh saw Issei clad in more dragon-looking armor and the entire armor was bigger than what the balance breaker armor was. "Let's go, Gilgamesh," Issei hissed as he broke out of the chains, much to Gilgamesh's shock. Gilgamesh shot weapon toward him out of the gates of Babylon at tremendous speed towards Issei, who blocked them with multiple magic circles before he charged towards her at blinding speed. He smashed his massive fist into her face, sending her flying before he charged up his power. Boost. 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 The compartment on his chest opened as the energy continued to swirl into the massive gem located in the center of his chest as Gilgamesh continued to hover around him, firing off a barrage of anti-dragon swords and spears that seemed to damage Issei, but it didn't succeed in stopping the massive energy Issei was collecting to disperse. "Looks like I'm going to have to draw out my trump card," Gilgamesh muttered in slight disgust as she stood away from Issei and reached into the gates of Babylon. Boost. 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 Achilles stood far back and watched the fight with a smirk on his face. Issei was made to go full out, but in turn made the reincarnation of the king of all heroes go all out as well. "Looks like Issei is about to gain another member for his group," Achilles thought in his head as Gilgamesh drew out a lance-looking sword that swirled with energy and Issei had finished charging his attack. "Long-Ina Smasher," Issei shouted as a massive green beam of pure magical energy was fired towards Gilgamesh, who beeped her arm back with a lance sword in her head as the red energy swirled around it. "Enuma Elish," Gilgamesh shouted as a massive red beam was shot out the tip of the lance and collided with the green beam that led to a massive explosion of energy. Once the energy had dissipated, Issei was on the ground face first in his default state while Gilgamesh was standing nearby, though she was panting and looked injured. Achilles helped up Issei with Gilgamesh's help and teleported back to Issei's room in the hotel. Once Issei had been placed on his bed, Achilles turned to face Gilgamesh, who had a surprised look on her face while she remained looking at Issei. "He really is what Office claimed him to be. He is the strongest red dragon emperor in history," Gilgamesh muttered, which caused Achilles to raise an eyebrow. "What do you have to do with Office?" Achilles asked the blonde, who shrugged. "Not much now, as staying with the red dragon should offer more of an interesting life if he can continue to live up to my expectations," Gilgamesh stated with a smirk as Achilles sighed. It was going to be an interesting journey to find the girl that he had summoned Issei here to help him with. Sona stood out on the balcony that was attached to Issei's room at the Valifer mansion. Since Issei had left and she had been left in charge of the family affairs by Issei, so she had been visiting the mansion on and off since he had left. While it hadn't been long since he had left, it was evident that he was already dearly missed by the members of his peerage and also by her sister Seraphol. When she had stayed over last night, she found Kuroka, Seraphol and Brynhildr had slept in his bed and all had snuggled wrapped themselves in the sheet and quilt on the bed, as it must have had his lingering magical presence and scent engraved into them. Sona let out a soft sigh and moved inside the room and sat down on Issei's bed with a small smile as she picked up his magical presence that was engraved on it. While she hadn't shown it, she also was starting to miss Issei, even though it had only been 3 days since he had left. "Oh, so Tan, you're in here," a cheery voice called out from the doorway of the room. Sona could immediately tell who had called out to her without even turning around to face them. "I thought I'd come see what dragged you, Kuroka and Brynhildr into this room each night," Sona stated to Seraphol as Seraphol sat down on the bed next to her. "He had finally come back from his century away and then had to leave so soon. For me it's the yearning for his presence next to me once again. And I'm sure it's the same for the Black Cat and Brynhildr. Well, it should be too long till he returns to us," Sona stated with some doubt in her voice, so Seraphol hadn't seemed to pick it up as Sona gazed out the window towards the moon that was rising up in the sky. Seraphol just nodded in response as she curled up in the bed sheets next to Sona. But Issei and co. It had been 2 days since Issei fought Gilgamesh and he hadn't woken up yet, though Achilles and Gilgamesh weren't to worries. Gilgamesh was currently sitting on the king bed in the room with Issei's head on her lap. Gilgamesh ran her hand through Issei's hair softly so she wouldn't wake him up as he was still recovering from all his spent magical energy. As Gilgamesh was running her hands through his hair, she felt a presence next to bed and one that she recognized instantly. She looked over to the presence and saw the infinite dragon god of time, Office, with her gaze towards the sleeping Issei. "Does he live up to the expectations I had set for him?" Office asked as she gazed at Issei with a neutral expression, though Gilgamesh could tell the dragon god was curious. "Yes, he does, Office, yes he does, and with the right training, he is sure to become the true Red Dragon Emperor," Gilgamesh stated with a small smile as she continued to run her fingers through Issei's hair. "Good, and maybe with him I'll finally be able to reclaim my silence," Office stated before she vanished quickly. Shortly after, Issei opened his eyes and looked up to see Gilgamesh's boobs above him, with him also able to see some of her red eyes looking down at him. "You're finally awake," Gilgamesh stated as a look of concern appeared on Issei's face as he tried to struggle but found himself chained down in place by the same chains which had bound him last night. "Why?" Issei asked as it was the only thing he could do in this situation. "You're strong, but you could become even stronger, and I wish to mold the potential I see in you and hope that one day you will become my equal in terms of power and one person that I will enjoy fighting, much like how the original king of all heroes found an equal in Enkidu," Gilgamesh answered softly with a small smile on her face. So just to clarify, you want to join my group to train me in the hopes I become your equal someday, Issei asked in clarification. Yes, that is correct, Gilgamesh answered as the chains that had bound Issei faded back into the gate of Babylon. Then I'll honor your decision, Issei stated as he summoned one of the archer cards he had been given and offered it to her. Gilgamesh took the card and looked at it curiously. This is an archer card that I was given to form my devil peerage. This card will boost some of your natural abilities, and as you seemingly fired out swords like arrows, I thought that this card would suit you. Now for this to work I need you to channel your magic energy into the card while I recite a small chant, Issei informed her as she nodded as she understood the instructions. Do you accept the card and role I have offered you, Issei chanted as Gilgamesh channeled her magic into the card in her hand, which caused it to glow. Yes, I do, she answered softly as the card floated towards her body and seemingly vanished into her body. Once the card was absorbed, Gilgamesh gauged up her abilities and found the card didn't increase her stats all that much, though it seemed her speed and eyesight had somewhat improved. Issei got up and moved into the lounge room where he saw Achilles asleep on the couch. Issei moved next to the couch and proceeded to drop his elbow into Achilles' gut, which made Achilles let out a howl of pain. Would you do that, man? Achilles asked Issei as he rubbed his gut. Pause, it's time to get up and don't act like that hurt. I know you weren't even fazed by that, Issei stated as he then made his way into the kitchen and grabbed himself a bowl of cereal as Achilles followed in suit. Gilgamesh had already eaten earlier this morning, so she just went and made herself comfortable on one of the lounge chairs. Breakfast was eaten in relative silence, and once breakfast had been finished everyone was congregated in the lounge room. What's our next move, Achilles? Issei asked as the silence in the room was broken in the room. Our first move would be to head north and seek out the Lady of the Lake, as that is where our target was last seen heading a couple of days ago, Achilles answered in a calm tone which took Issei by surprise. Wait, we are talking about the actual Lady of the Lake, the one in the King Arthur legend that gave the king Excalibur after Caliburn had broken, not some reincarnation of her? Issei asked with slight shock evident in his voice. Yes, that would be her. She is the gatekeeper of Babylon for a reason. It has been said she is also raising a young child who is, Achilles stated, but before he could finish Issei cut him off. The reincarnation of Lancelot, I presume, Issei interrupted Achilles, who answered with a simple nod. Then let's go, God ouch, forbid me from dragging this out any longer than I should. Especially if they are after her. Issei stated as he rose to his feet. Am I missing something here? Gilgamesh asked and was replied with a folder flying towards her, courtesy of Achilles. Gilgamesh opened the folder and peered into its contents as an intrigued expression adored her face. Now this is interesting, Gilgamesh stated as she passed the folder back to Achilles before the three of them signed out of the hotel and made their way north in Achilles' car to try and locate the Lady of the Lake. In the underworld. The Valifer mansion was silent, with each current member in the mansion asleep. A light breeze drifted through the lands of Valifer as the members of Issei's peerage had varying types of dreams about Issei. Two figures could be seen approaching the Valifer lands through the main gate. As they approached the main gate, one figure touched the closed gate softly. As he touched the gate, it flung open that seemed like it was happy to see the figure. Still recognizes me, I see, one figure stated as both the figures made their way towards the mansion. As they got to a path that headed up the hill to where a lone tree sat upon the hill, the figure who had opened the gate turned to the other figure. Go and greet the new residents of the mansion. I will see that the plan goes as planned. The figure stated as the other figure nodded and made haste towards the Valifer mansion. As the figure reached the crest of the hill, he gazed at the two gravestones with a smile. As the moonlight shone of the figure, it could be seen that the figure was male and was wearing black and red western armor that had a black cape attached to it. The man had black hair with piercing green eyes and had a scar covering his right eye, which was covered mostly by a black and gold eye patch. It's nice to see a memorial to me, though it isn't needed for I have returned, the man stated as he turned to face the mansion as he felt blows being exchanged. In the mansion. Brynhildr was currently exchanging blows with an unknown assailant who had breached through the mansion's front door. The figure was wielding a red lance that gave off a demonic vibe, so Brynhildr was careful not to get hit by the lance as she dodged and parried blow after blow in the hope to stall time. Who are you? Brynhildr asked with no emotion as she focused on trying to find an opening. You should focus more on the fight than trying to discover who I am, the figure replied in a distorted voice. As they both jumped back from each other and got ready to charge back and resume their fight. Immense magical power erupted from the hill near the mansion as Seraphil appeared near Brynhildr with a fearful expression on her face. We need to go now, she shouted as they teleported away and the figure disappeared out of the mansion. Back on the hill. The man was surrounded by magical circles that had the crest of Valifer on them as one massive magic circle appeared above the Valifer mansion. His magical presence was causing the ground around him to crack and shards of the earth began to lift up around him. I, Felgrid Valifer, have returned underworld and I will now show you the power of a god. The man, called Felgrid, called out as his magic continued to rise in pressure. From the ground, we arose, to the ground you all shall return, Felgrid chanted as the magical circles activated around him and the massive magic circle activated. The earth below the mansion crack opened with magma spewing forth as the mansion collapsed into the earth below. But Surzich watched towards the magical signature with a slightly feared expression as the entire underworld shook as this magic presence continued rise to an even higher height. He is supposed to be dead. How is he back? And this powerful Surzich wondered with a mixture of fear and curiosity in his voice. I have notified the other Satans as ordered, Lord Lucifer, a voice stated him from the door of his office. The voice belonged to Graphia, his wife and queen. Good. Let's hope Issei returns soon as he needs to know, Surzich stated aimlessly as he continued to gauge the power being released. But Seraphol and Issei's peerage. Seraphol had teleported Issei's peerage just in time to the Citri clan mansion, which was still violently shaking. Issei's peerage looked absolutely terrified as the ground continued to violently shake before it stopped suddenly and the presence which Seraphol had sensed disappeared suddenly. The magical signature. It's him, isn't it? Lady Citri asked her eldest daughter, who slowly nodded as she tried to steady her body which was shaking in fear. Now you're all probably wondering who that was, but Issei will have to tell you once he gets back. As it is business to inform you about who just attacked us, Seraphol told Issei's peerage. Should we contact Issei-san? Asia asked softly as she hugged herself. I'll do that. As I was in charge of his affairs in his absence, Sona stated as she contacted Issei via telepathy and informed him of what happened. Seraphol hoped Issei would turn up soon as he was the only one who had the power to stand up to the man as he had done it before. But how wrong she was, how wrong indeed. I see I'll be back very soon, Issei stated through telepathic magic as he clenched his fist at the news he had just received from Sona. I thought I killed him. Why is he back? Issei mumbled, which received him curious looks from both Gilgamesh and Achilles. What happened? Achilles asked as they continued to drive towards where the Lady of the Lake was supposedly located. My peerage was attacked by my old enemy, so we need to finish this quickly so I can return, Issei answered as Achilles sped up in response. After an hour of driving, sounds of battle reached their ears from a nearby lake. Issei, Achilles and Gilgamesh rushed to the scene to see a blonde woman with green eyes exchanging blows with one man, while the other man that they could see was merely watching the fight. The blonde woman was dressed in Western armor, though she wasn't wearing a helmet. Her hair seemed short with a blue ribbon attached to the bottom of some strands of her hair that held two braids that circled her head together. Her armor was a dark silver color with a blue emblem on the front of the chest plate. Underneath the armor, it seemed like she wore some kind of blue long-sleeved shirt that had drapes attached to it that flowed out the bottom of the chest plate. The man she was fighting was roughly 2 meters tall and had a well-built body. His hair was a short brown color and he was wearing what seemed to be Greek medieval armor and was wielding a normal Greek-type sword. The man watching the fight was wearing what looked to be a dark green bodysuit that showed off his muscular frame. He had black hair that seemed like it was some sort of organized mess, and somehow, he looked quite handsome with it in that style. He had a beauty mark under his left eye that seemed to be a magic curse of some kind. On his back were 2 lances wrapped in some sort of cloth or shroud. Hercules, it seems we have some unwelcomed company, we should retreat, the man watching advised as the other man, who was currently locked in combat with the women in Western armor, seemed to sigh. But I was just getting warmed up, the Armyud, we shall fight again sometime, he complained as he pushed the blonde girl away with an abnormal amount of strength as the two then disappear in a teleportation seal. Before Issei could start up a discussion with the said blonde, she came towards him with incredible speed and slashed at him vertically with the hope of slicing him in half, but her sword was blocked by Achilles' shield. What do you want with me? The blonde woman asked as Achilles pushed her away. My name is Issei Haidu, and this is Achilles and Gilgamesh, Issei introduced as he remained on guard. Are you Artoria Pendragon? And what if I am? The girl replied as she grabbed the hilt of her blade that was shrouded in wind so the others could see it. Then I want you to come with us, Issei plainly put as the girl, who they knew to be Artoria by her looks, shook her head. If you can beat me in a fight then I'll go with you, otherwise I'll cut you down, she informed Issei, who simply nodded and summoned a sword and sheath to his left hand. Very well, I find those terms acceptable. I won't hold back, so you shouldn't either, Issei stated as he drew the blade from its sheath, which caused the blade to ignite with flames. This sword is Dernwin, once wielded by Ritterch Hale, and now is mine as I am worthy to wield. If you know who I am then you should also know about my blade, Artoria stated as the wind around her blade was vanquished to reveal a golden blade with a gold and blue hilt. Whoa. It's beautiful, Achilles and Gilgamesh exclaimed at the same time as they gazed upon the blade revealed before them. The sword of promised victory as it was called, and it represented the hopes of all past, present and future soldiers as they approached their final moments. "Let's begin," Issei stated as his boosted gear activate. Welsh Dragon Balance Breaker. Issei shot forward in a burst of speed as he swung the sword in a vertical motion, though Artoria sidestepped the strike and retaliated with a horizontal slash which Issei just managed to block with his own sword. Boost. Issei spun round and used his feet to launch himself back towards Artoria for another strike, this time a horizontal slash near her knees, which caused Artoria to jump up out of the way, though before she had time to counter Issei's sword slashed, Issei used the momentum from his swing to spin himself around and deliver a kick straight up that connected to Artoria's jaw, which sent her flying upwards. Acting in quick succession, Issei followed her into the sky and slammed his sword down, which Artoria was able to block the strike, but the strength behind the attack sent Artoria into the ground below, creating a crater where she had impacted the ground. Boost. Issei landed on the ground near the crater and looked around through the dust to try and see what damage he had caused to her, but before he could react, Artoria struck at him with a horizontal sweep with her sword to his ribcage. The sword, while it didn't cause any damage to Issei's skin, it shattered the armor near his ribcage and sent him through nearby trees. Artoria sped towards him and struck at his side again, but Issei blocked the strike with his sword. Holy energy met demonic energy as the two blades clashed against each other, one seeking to overpower the other. Boost. While Issei had been pushed back onto the ground, with his power once again doubled, he was able to push back and send Artoria back away from him with a burst of flames. "So, it seems you can double your power whenever you wish while in that form," Artoria stated as her soul seemed to recognize the technique. "Yes, you would be correct. I am the host to the boosted gear which can double my power to the maximum power I can endure. While in its base form it will double my power every 10 seconds, but in this form, it can double my power whenever I wish it to," Issei informed her as he poured his magical energy into the sword, which caused the flames on the blade to increase in capacity. "If you can withstand my ultimate attack I will declare victory to you," Artoria exclaimed as she raised her sword, Excalibur, above her head as tiny orbs of light appeared from the ground around her. Issei continued to increase the amount of power in his attack to match the power of the attack that was about to be launched towards him. "Excalibur," Artoria called out as she swung the sword down as it released a large beam of golden energy towards Issei, who released his attack in return. "Dragon's Flame," Issei called out as flames around the sword grew to size and launched forward with a dragon head forming at the front of it. The two beams of energy collided and pushed against each other, one trying to burst through the other to seek the targets at the other end of said beams. The golden beams started to push back the flaming dragon head. As Issei saw his attack getting pushed back, he attempted to pour more magical energy into the attack, but it didn't seem to push back the golden beam of magical energy. The golden beam soon broke through Issei's attack and struck Issei. "Shit," Issei shouted as the beam collided with him. As the dust settled, Artoria gazed towards Issei, who was on his knees, his armor completely broken and shattered with his right arm missing. "That was one hell of an attack," Issei exclaimed as he used magic to stop the bleeding on his wounds. "You survived my attack, so I'll come with you, as I promised," Artoria declared as she offered Issei a hand, who gratefully accepted the help up. "Let's go then," Issei stated as he readied a magical circle near them. "Wait, we're just going to teleport down to the underworld," Achilles wondered as he gave Issei a curious glance. "Oh, that's right, first with you and Artoria's permission, I'd like for both of you to join my peerage," Issei told them with a soft voice as he pulled out 2 cards. "I said I'd follow you, so if this is what I must do then so be it," Artoria informed Issei. "Hell, yeah man, I'm down," Achilles exclaimed with a massive grin on his face. Once Issei had made them part of his peerage, they used the teleportation circle Issei hand conjured to teleport them to the grounds of the Valifer mansion. Issei looked around at the damage the grounds had received from the attack, and he was somewhat surprised at the amount of ground not affected. The only thing missing would be the mansion, but other than that there was no more damage to the surrounding area. Issei yowered back, multiple voices shouted as he saw Seraphil and Issei peerage running towards him with grins on their faces, but once Issei had turned to face them, their smiles turned into worried expressions. "What happened to your arm?" Seraphil asked as she ran over to inspect the wound. "It's nothing much, Seraphil, don't worry," Issei told her as he petted her head softly. Don't worry. You were gone for just about a week, we are attacked by Felgrid, and you come back to me with an arm missing. Don't tell me I shouldn't be worrying, you big stupid dragon," Seraphil shouted at him as she punched his chest multiple times in rage, but as she continuously punched him, her blows were softer and softer to the point where Issei couldn't even feel them anymore. He could see tears in the Leviathan's eyes as she punched his chest lightly. "Hey, I'm fine, I'm sure Akuja with all his tech can make me an arm, or help me figure out how to get a new one," Issei told her as he wiped her tears away and kneeled in front of her. His peerage looked on at the scene with some jealous looks that came from Kuroka, but overall the entire peerage was in good spirits. Who are these three? Kuroka asked as she eyed Achilles, Gilgamesh, Artoria, who were standing next to Issei and were slightly tense. This is Achilles, descendant of Greek hero Achilles, Gilgamesh, the reincarnation of the Urk King Gilgamesh, and Artoria, reincarnation of King Arthur. Issei informed everyone as he gestured to them and then gestured to his other peerage members. And these are my peerage members: Kuroka, the cat, Asia, former holy maiden, and Brynhildr, the fallen Valkyrie. After everyone was introduced and after Achilles tried to flirt multiple times with the girls in Issei's peerage, but was met with mostly failures from Kuroka and Brynhildr, but poor Asia looked like she was about to melt from embarrassment, Issei and Seraphol took everyone to the Citri Manor where they would be living until a new home could be built. Which, as it states, with magic it would only be a day too. Later that night. Issei's room. Issei gazed up at the ceiling as he laid down on his bed by himself. The girls were in other rooms, much to some of their protests, though after Lady Citri gave them a death glare they soon stopped arguing. Issei sighed as he closed his eyes to get some sleep, his arm having been patched up by Asia, who couldn't grow the limb back, only stop it bleeding all over the place when he released his magic. He'd have to go see Akuja sometime once he sorted out Felgrid, but for now he needed rest. As Issei rolled over to get more comfortable, he heard his door open slightly with a creak. He opened his eyes and gazed towards the door to see Seraphol in a blue corset and stockings that came up to near her mid-thigh. Like what you see? Seraphol asked with a smirk as she did a 360-degree turn to show him every angle of her body. What is it you want, Seraphol? Issei asked as he sat lean up, revealing most of his muscular chest to Seraphol, who drooled slightly at the sight of it. Seraphol made her way forward towards Issei in a slow, seductive walk as she flaunted her hips with each step. Issei inhaled sharply as he watched her movements as she walked forward, unable to take them off her body as it rocked side to side. His dragon instincts were telling him to slam her against the bed and fuck her all night long till she could barely walk, but he restrained himself to see what she had to offer him before he snapped. As Seraphol reached the bed, she sat down on the edge and crossed her legs, while she leant forward in a seductive manner which gave Issei a clear view of her cleavage. "Oh, my dear Issei, what I want is you," Seraphol answered in a seductive voice as Issei felt a magical boundary around his room. "Oh, and don't worry about someone hearing us or interrupting us." Issei was floating, to put it in a simple way. He was floating as screens of images flew past him. Though these images weren't of his past, or even visions of the future, but the pasts of what seemed to be the members of his peerage. He saw into glimpses of Kuroka's past from when she served another devil that she ended up killing. He saw how Asia was taken in by the church once they had discovered she possessed the sacred gear Twilight Healing. The moment when Brynhildr was made to live a mortal woman's life after she had sided with Anar instead of Jolgunnar, who Odin had preferred. While he viewed these memories, he felt what he could only guess as the feelings that they felt at the time, which seemed to increase his feeling to protect them after seeing them experience such moments in their life. In the minds of Kuroka, Asia and Brynhildr. While Issei was have flashes into each of their pasts, the same thing was occurring in the minds of Kuroka, Asia and Brynhildr, except what they were witnessing was the very thing Issei hadn't wanted them to see. Issei's past. Civil war. Issei brought his sword down on a weak devil who had flew at him in order to strike him down after Issei had killed the rest of this devil's friends. Why do you want war? It'll be the destruction of our race," Issei mumbled out loud as he flicked the blood from Durnwin and sheathed it back into its sheath, which was located on the left side of Issei's waist. Issei reporting in, "The old Satan faction presence here has been dealt with," Issei stated from the communication piece in his left ear. "Ah, nice job, Issei. You may head back," Surziches stated before he stopped. "Issei, there are explosions coming from the Citri Manor." Issei understood what Surziches was going to ask him and summoned forth his wings before flying as fast as he could to the Citri Manor. Please be alright, Seraphol, Issei thought as he flew. He arrived at the manor to see most of it covered in ice and Mr. and Mrs. Seraphol outside. "She is still battling inside. Hurry, Issei," Lady Seraphol told the boy in a panicked voice as Issei nodded and headed inside the manor. As he entered the main lobby, he saw Seraphol battling 5 hooded figures, each with a different weapon. "Issei." Seraphol greeted with surprise before a sword cut her arm, which sent her stumbling back. "Seraphol." Issei cried as he drew Drinwin and sent a blast of flames towards the figures before he ran and picked up Seraphol with his other hand that didn't have his sword in it. Issei summoned flames using his blade around him and Seraphol to protect them while he checked over her wounds. He saw a multitude of cuts along her body that didn't seem to be healing with her regenerative powers. "Don't worry about me, Issei," Seraphol mumbled as she tried to stand up but fell back down into Issei's arm as she passed out. He used a magic circle to teleport her back to the main base for their faction so that the medics they had could heal her up. Once Serafal was teleported away, he stood up and slashed his sword horizontally, which caused the flames to expand outwards towards the 5 figures who raised up magical defenses to block the flames. "Rise Earth Knights," Issei chanted as he channeled his magic into the ground below him, as the earth rose and formed into knights who then charged forwards to strike at the figures before they had time to react. The knights managed to down one of the figures before they were destroyed by lightning magic from the others. Issei ran forward with his Drinwin drawn and thrusted it forward into one of the figure's chest, only to be parried by another blade, sending Issei of balance into a roundhouse kick by another figure who had jumped at the figure who parried Issei's thrust. Issei flipped onto his feet before he slammed his hand on the ground, which caused the earth to rise in pillars before flying towards the figures at an immense speed. With that, Issei had managed to kill another figure by crushing them with the earth pillars before the other 3 charged forward. Issei summoned up flames and sent them forth towards the charging figures, who all jumped over the fire before they landed safely on the other side, only to be met by Issei's sword. One of the figures twirled their lance to knock the blade, leaving Issei's guard open for another one, who punched Issei in the gut with a magic-enhanced fist, which caused a shock wave to ripple through the mansion. Issei coughed up blood as the 3 figures continued their assault, with Issei barely to block each of their blows. Though they suddenly stopped before vanishing through a magical circle that looked familiar to Issei, but he couldn't figure it out as he stood up and teleported back to the main base of the new Satan faction to get restored to his full condition. Issei's past end. With Issei. Issei woke up with his left side numb from something freezing that had been next to him the entire night. "Still as cold as the ice you wield," Issei muttered softly under his breath as he moved a bit of hair from her face before he got out of the bed and moved around his left side to get feeling back into it. He gazed at his left arm to see more of those mysterious tattoos had formed on his arm. There were 6 total tattoos that seemed to have 3 parts each. "Ought to find out what these are," Issei mumbled to himself as he got dressed and headed into the Citri Manor dining room to grab some breakfast. The only one at the table was Sona, who seemed to be reading some sort of material while she slowly consumed an apple. "Aren't devils supposed to entice humans with apples, not eat them?" Issei joked as he sat across from Sona, who, when she heard Issei's voice, she nearly jumped out her seat as her face went completely dark red as images of what she had witnessed last night came flooding back into her memory. "I suppose that would be a fair observation," Sona stammered as she tried to get rid of the memories in her mind. "Why the blush, Sona? And why do you smell like ah shit?" Issei stated before he hanged his head in his hands. "You saw, didn't you?" "See what?" Sona asked, trying to get rid of his suspicion. "You saw me and your sister fucking, didn't you?" She forgot to close the door and to set the boundary field so that no one could see, and Issei told her as Sona's blush only got darker. I didn't mean to, I swear," Sona apologized as she tried to hide her face in her hands. "I'm not mad at you, I'm just mad at your sister for being so stupid and at myself for not checking the door," Issei stated to her calmly as he felt magical energy increase from the doorway. Issei turned his head to see Kuroka, Brynhildr and Gilgamesh looking at him with their magical energy emitted around them. "Now girls, if you want to take out your frustration of not being first, then let's fight outside. Sound good?" Issei told them with a soft smile as he stood up. "Fine, let's go," Kuroka shouted as she headed outside with Brynhildr, who only nodded and followed. Gilgamesh raised her eyebrow at Issei before she replied to Issei. "I'll just get some tonight, won't be hard with my chains," Gilgamesh stated as she went to grab some breakfast, while Issei just chuckled before heading out behind the Citri mansion, where Brynhildr and Kuroka were waiting. Brynhildr had her lance at the ready while Kuroka was seemingly charging her senjutsu. Issei drew his blade as flames wrapped around the blade before he gestured with his hand for them to come at him. Kuroka launched forward first with a senjutsu-enhanced kick, while Brynhildr followed him with a thrust from her lance. Issei brought up his leg to guard against Kuroka's kick while he used his sword to block Brynhildr's thrust, though with the force behind the 2 strikes, send Issei back in a diagonal direction, but Issei managed to flip himself over, so he landed on his feet before he spun his sword around to meet a thrust from Brynhildr's lance. "Come on girls, let's pick this up," Issei stated as he used his strength to knock open Brynhildr's guard by pushing forward before he slammed his fist into her gut, sending her tumbling away. "Adyunaya," Kuroka announced as Issei sent her behind him. He spun round quickly before he blocked her roundhouse kick aimed at his head with his arm before he grabbed her leg and spun her round before releasing her so that she collided with Brynhildr, who had just got up. Unnoticed by anyone, a crack formed along Issei's hand, but it didn't leak any sort of blood. It was more like a crack you'd see on a vase or something fragile. Making his way inside with the girls, who headed up to get changed out of their now dirtied clothes, while Issei headed over to where he saw Serafal and Surziches conversing in the lobby of the Citri household. "Ah Issei, good timing, I was just looking for you," Surziches stated to Issei before he gasped at Issei's missing arm. "How'd this happen? You're the 7th strongest devil in the underworld," Surziches stated in shock as he gazed at the wound. "So what brings you here, Surziches?" Issei asked after he had finished explaining his loss of arm to him. I'm here as the church has sent word that they are sending exorcists into Sona's and Ria's territory as they have tracked the Excalibur fragments to Kuo. Surzich's explained to Issei, who decided it wouldn't be wise to tell him that those weren't pieces of Excalibur as his new peerage member owned the actual Excalibur. I see, then why tell me this unless you want me there to oversee things to make sure they don't end up hurting your precious sister, Issei informed Surzich, who nodded in confirmation. Yes, with your power you should be an easy match for them if things go south though, if a fight between the church and devils can be avoided, that would be the best option, Surzich answered as Issei sighed as he ran his hands through his hair. Very well, I assume you informed the church that an ultimate devil will be present in the town then? He asked Surzich, who nodded simply. I suggest you head out immediately as the exorcists are due in the town any minute now, and you should be there before they get there so you can greet them. Surzich informed him and received a small nod from Issei before Issei left to gather up his peerage members. Seraphil watched him leave with a small smile on her face. Be safe, Issei, she called out to him to only receive a thumbs up in return. The outskirts of Kuo. 3 figures with a church hooded cape draped over them walked down a dirt path towards the city of Kuo, where the church had tracked the stolen pieces of Excalibur. The church hooded cape hid most of their features from view unless you were close enough to gaze under the hood to see the facial features of the people. The figures stopped when they saw 2 figures in front of them. One had a normal sword sheathed on their waist and had a female figure, while the other had a spear and shield sheathed on their back and possessed a male figure. Ah, just on time, the male voice called out, which belonged to Achilles as he faced the exorcists. Our king would like to meet you. Very well, we were informed that we would be meeting the ultimate class devil that was sent here. The person in the middle agreed, and judging by the sound of their voice the person was female. Achilles took the lead with Saber following him along with the 3 exorcists. It took them 10 minutes of working to reach Issei's house. As the 3 exorcists entered the building, they were greeted by a massive surge of pure magical power, causing 2 of the exorcists to fall onto the ground under intense magical pressure. Little did they know they had just walked into a dragon's den. End of the part 2. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.